It's easy to go grocery shopping today. Usually, a person gets into their car, turns on their favorite radio station or music, and heads out to buy groceries for a week or even two. Leisurely strolling with a cart between the aisles, choosing between food brands, making impulsive purchases, mac and cheese. Thoughts like, maybe I should get a couple of cans of beans. Do I have any eggs and peanut butter left? Seems like I'm out of bacon. But it wasn't always like that, and it still isn't for everyone. For some, it was the most dangerous night excursions, which could be the last time they left their homes. A person goes out for bread and never returns. There can be many reasons for this when your country is at war. How did Bosnia and other countries of the former Yugoslavia descend into total chaos? It all started with the breakup of Yugoslavia, a state that included Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, Kosovo, and Slovenia. This period was marked by the de facto secession of newly proclaimed states, intense military conflicts, and interventions, which resulted from the gradual decline of the unified state. Fearing an opposition of reformers within the party and its support from the regions, Tito engaged in nation-building as early as the 1970s. An additional bond for the multi-confessional and multinational country was supposed to be the idea of a Yugoslav nation and atheism, promoted by the federal government. Nevertheless, the main foundation of Yugoslav unity was Tito himself, a national leader since the time of the Partisan War, and a skilled politician who suppressed any opposition with a firm hand. But in 1980, Tito passed away. As a result, the office of the president was abolished, and the country was led by a collective body. Along with the symbol of Yugoslav unity, the effectiveness of governance also disappeared. It is important to note that Tito, who governed the country from Serbian Belgrade, was the son of a Croat father and a Slovene mother. The ethnic policies of his successors did not yield results, and the brief economic miracle was replaced by a recession. The idea of a united Yugoslavia, which took hold in large cities with mixed populations, failed in rural areas, where ethnic and religious differences between communities remained important. Economic stagnation and the absence of a strong hand awakened the previously dormant specter of nationalism. The trailblazer in this regard was the backbone of Yugoslavism, the Serbs. The memorandum of the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts became a manifesto for Serbian national. The unrest was accompanied by the expulsion of Serbs and the looting of their property. The reaction from the educated Serbs in the capital was unequivocal. The leader of the Serbian communists, Milosevic, initiated the process of dismantling the autonomous regions within Yugoslavia. The popular movement of people he led was perceived by minorities not as federal government measures, but as a challenge from another nation. The process of disintegration was set in motion. In parallel with events in Serbia, the wheel of discontent was turning in Croatia and Slovenia, both of which were aware of their Catholic identity. The aspirations of Croats and Slovenes for independence were supported by most countries in European community. Moreover, in democratic elections held across the republics, nationalist parties won everywhere except Serbia and Montenegro. In Croatia, a process began to remove Serbs from public office and the Ministry of Internal Affairs, as well as attacks on Orthodox churches. On November 8, 1990, the first multi-party elections were held in Bosnia and Herzegovina, revealing significant differences between representatives of Bosnian Muslims, Serbs, and Croats. All three groups began establishing their own governing bodies, law enforcement, and military forces. On January 9, 1992, Bosnian Serbs declared the creation of the Republic of the Serb People of Bosnia and Herzegovina, known as the Republika Srpska. In April 1992, Karadzic became the president of Republika Srpska. In May 1992, Lieutenant General Mladic took command of the army of the Republika Srpska. In April 1992, Bosnia and Herzegovina received international recognition. and on April 8th, the territorial defense headquarters of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina was established, headed by Colonel Efendic. On the same day, a similar body, the Croatian Defense Council, led by Major General Petković, was established among the Croats. On July 3rd, the creation of the Croatian community of Herzegovina was proclaimed in Mostar, and on August 28, 1993, it was transformed into the Croatian Republic of Herzegovina, headed by Emir Boban. The situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina was complicated by Croatia's secession from Yugoslavia and the armed conflict that began in 1991 with the Croatian Serbs, who established the Republic of Serbian Krajina on Croatian territory. The position of the international community had a significant impact on the course of the conflict. On March 10, 1992, the United States and the European Union adopted a declaration recognizing the independence of the Yugoslav republics, including Bosnia and Herzegovina. On May 22nd, Bosnia and Herzegovina became a full member of the United Nations within its existing borders, which was strongly opposed by both local Serbs and Croats, as it contradicted their aspirations for self-determination. In 1992, the main objective of the military actions by Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks was to maintain and, if possible, expand their zones of control, transforming them into ethnically homogeneous territories. To achieve this goal, all sides engaged in ethnic cleansing. These actions often involved looting and other crimes against civilians. Initially, the Serbs had a military advantage due to the larger territory under their control, its encompassing position, the weapons of the Yugoslav People's Army that fell into their hands, and the large number of military personnel who joined the army of Republika Srpska after the withdrawal of Yugoslav People's Army units from the Republic in May 1992. On April 6th, Serbian forces began the siege of Sarajevo, and by May 2nd, the city was completely blockaded. The territories controlled by the Serbs were divided into western and eastern parts, with a narrow corridor in the area of Brčko in northern Bosnia. From June 24th to October 6th, the army of Republika Srpska, together with the military of the Republic of Serbian Krajina, successfully conducted Operation Corridor 92 against Croatian forces to establish a land connection between the two parts of the Serbian territories and with the Republic of Serbian Krajina, as well as Serbia itself. On June 29th, the Butmir airport near Sarajevo came under the control of UN peacekeepers, and on July 3rd, the delivery of humanitarian aid began. In August, the first full-scale military clashes between Bosniaks and Croats occurred in Herzegovina and central Bosnia. On October 29th, the army of Republika Srpska seized the town of Jajce as a result of Operation Verbus 92. The clashes primarily affected civilians, many of whom fled their homes or were captured. Hundreds of concentration camps emerged, where detainees of various nationalities were held. In January 1993, Croatian forces launched a successful offensive against Muslim settlements in the Lushva River Valley area. However, in the summer, the Muslims launched a counteroffensive against the Croats in central Bosnia and captured the towns of Novi Travnik, Konjic, where there was a factory producing artillery, Jablanica, Vojnica, and Gornji Vakuf Oskoplje. In September 1993, the Bosnians conducted Operation Neretva 93 with the aim of breaking the siege of the besieged part of Mostar, advancing into the southern areas of the Neretva River Valley, and defeating the Croatian forces in Herzegovina. The hostilities ended without result. The situation for the Bosnians was exacerbated due to an internal elite split. On September 27th, businessman and political opponent of Izetbegovic, F. Abdic, proclaimed the creation of the autonomous region of Western Bosnia, and part of the military sided with him. Izetbegovic ordered the troops loyal to him to attack Abdic's forces. Simultaneously, the Serbs were tightening the ring around Sarajevo. On July 11th, the forces of the Republika Srpska, as part of Operation Lukovac 93, occupied several key positions. Thanks to successful military actions, the Serbs managed to tighten the ring around Muslim Sarajevo. Since the beginning of the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the international community could not ignore the unfolding events. The war was accompanied by mass killings, ethnic cleansing, and brutal sieges of cities, which compelled international organizations and states to take action. From the very beginning of the conflict, the UN tried to prevent escalation, but its steps were not decisive enough. As early as 1992, the UN imposed an arms embargo on the region. But this only worsened the situation for the Bosnians, as Serbia and Croatia had their own military resources, while the Bosnians had little effective weaponry. In 1993, the UN declared Sarajevo, Srebrenica, and other cities as safe zones, promising protection for the civilian population. However, in 1995, the most tragic event occurred: the Srebrenica massacre. The Dutch contingent of peacekeepers was unable to prevent the mass killings of Bosnians by Serbian forces under the command of Ratko Mladic. This tragedy ultimately discredited the UN's peacekeeping efforts. On July 6, 1995, the Drina Corps of Bosnian Serbs launched a massive assault on the safe zone, and within 5 days, it was completely in the attackers' hands. The Dutch battalion, lacking the necessary military strength, was unable to offer resistance. 2 NATO aircraft attacked the advancing Serbian tanks, but the sorties were stopped after the Serbs threatened to kill the peacekeepers. On July 11th, General Mladic triumphantly walked through the town, accompanied by his officers. As he entered the city, Mladic announced, "Everyone who wants to leave will be transported, both big and small, young and old. Do not be afraid. No one will harm you." But it turned out to be a lie. By the evening, around 20 to 25,000 residents had gathered near the Dutch base. The Serbian command promised to send them to Tuzla, which was controlled by Muslims, the next day. However, when the boarding onto the buses sent for evacuation began, Serbian militiamen started pulling young men out of the line, and it turned out they were taken away to be executed. All of this happened practically in front of the Dutch soldiers, who were unable to do anything. Eyewitnesses and survivors recount. Corpses were lying in the streets. They were later buried with bulldozers in approximately 80 mass graves. Some people were buried alive. Children were killed in front of their fathers and mothers. Women were raped in front of their families and children. The surviving Muslim residents of Srebrenica left the city. The World Health Organization registered 35,632 refugees from there. In January 2007, the UN Hague Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia classified the massacre in Srebrenica as genocide. Concerted efforts were made to capture all Muslim men of military service age, stated the indictment of one of the Serbian commanders. However, in many cases, the victims were those who clearly could not have fought due to their age. The youngest of those killed was 10 years old, and the oldest was 65. New mass graves and individual remains were discovered many years later. The besieged city of Sarajevo became the most vivid example of human survival during the war. The siege lasted from April 1992 to February 1996, making it one of the longest sieges in modern history. Supply lines to the city were cut off in the first weeks of the siege. Food supplies were running out. There was no water, and homes were cold. The primary source of water was the Miljacka River and functioning water pumps. However, the river water was contaminated with waste and chemicals, making it dirty. And during extreme shortages, getting sick was not an option. There were also challenges with the water pumps. The main difficulty was reaching them and collecting water. Any working pump was under sniper fire. Many people died simply trying to fetch water. People collected rainwater and melted ice and snow in the basements of buildings. Food was also hard to come by. Since the city's supply lines were cut, people had to eat whatever they could find. All stray animals, dogs, cats, even pigeons and other birds, disappeared. Later, even domestic animals were used for food. I remember us eating soup made from a leather belt. We boiled it for hours to soften it even a little, one survivor recalled. People tried to grow some crops by turning flower beds into mini gardens. They grew potatoes, beans, and onions. But due to the shortage of land and seeds, the harvest was meager. There were humanitarian convoys, but they came with huge interruptions and were often looted by local bandits, who would then resell the spoils. Might made right, and society regressed to the level of ancient times. The black market became the main supply artery. You could find anything: flour, sugar, even canned goods from the 1970s. But the prices were astronomical. A bag of flour could cost a gold ring or a month's salary. Survival under siege gave rise to a new value system where a life could be worth a pack of cigarettes. People faced moral dilemmas. What is more important, to help a neighbor or to survive oneself? People sold their children at markets, while cigarettes, bullets, and medicine became the local currency. Painkillers were traded for meat, antibiotics for flour. Instances of cannibalism became more frequent. People feared that one day bandits or hungry neighbors would break into their homes. People were turning into beasts. They found cooked human meat in his apartment. He said it was the only thing left. Yet there were also kind people who did not let this terrible war break their spirit or dehumanize them. Mira Hadjic, a 52-year-old woman and former baker, decided that not even war would stop her from baking bread. I knew I couldn't feed everyone, but if at least 10 people didn't go to bed hungry each day, that would already be a victory. The main problem was fuel. She dismantled furniture and burned all the books. And when there was nothing left, people from neighboring houses started bringing her firewood. I baked bread and handed it out. Sometimes people gave me something in return, but more often it was just a thank you. The hardest part was when children came, and I couldn't give them anything. One day, Mira went out to get water and came under fire. She survived, but lost an arm. Nevertheless, she didn't stop baking bread. I couldn't stop until the siege ended. If I had, the war would have defeated me. After the war ended, Mira opened a bakery where she gave out bread for free to those who couldn't afford it. What remains unclear is the cruelty and motivation of the snipers who shot at ordinary, innocent people. They were amused by shooting at defenseless people, setting traps, wounding one person, and when someone tried to save them, killing them as well. To save ammunition, they competed with each other in shooting in the head. The most terrifying place became Sniper Alley, a boulevard in the city center that was once a favorite spot for taking a walk, but had now become a grave for the citizens. Also, according to some stories, it was possible to pay a sniper so that they simply wouldn't shoot at you the next day. You walk down the street and hear a gunshot. Someone falls, and you don't know if you'll be next. When winter came, people also faced the problem of a lack of heating. The only available fuel was furniture, books, clothing, window frames. Even rare historical books were used, as people dismantled abandoned houses and burned floors. Sometimes, they even burned rubber. I remember burning huge tomes written in Latin. They burned well, but we knew we were destroying our history. But people didn't lose hope and clung to life with all their might. Schools and universities continued to operate, often teaching in basements by candlelight. People organized concerts and theater performances in ruins for free, just to forget for a moment about what was happening around them. In 1993, local girls even organized a beauty contest, Miss Besieged Sarajevo, perhaps the strangest and bravest beauty contest ever held. The girls didn't just participate in the contest, they held signs saying, "Don't let them kill us." Photos from the contest spread around the world, becoming a symbol of human resilience. We wanted to show that even if we are surrounded by death and destruction, we remain human. In 1993, the Bosnians constructed a tunnel beneath the airport, linking besieged Sarajevo with government-controlled territory. This tunnel was used to transport supplies, people, and even electricity. How did this hell end and the war stop? After the Srebrenica massacre, NATO launched Operation Deliberate Force, during which they managed to destroy a significant portion of key military targets of the Bosnian Serbs in 11 days and force them to negotiate. the United States actively engaged in the peace process. In 1995, Defense Secretary William Perry stated, "We cannot allow another genocide to occur in Europe. The United States will do everything possible to compel the sides to make peace." Under pressure from NATO, the United States, and the United Nations, the parties to the conflict were forced to come to the negotiating table. In November 1995, in the American city of Dayton, a peace agreement was signed with the mediation of Bill Clinton, which ended the war. Bosnia and Herzegovina now has 5 presidents at once. Each of them takes turns leading the government. This system of rotation allows for the consideration of the interests of all ethnic groups. Bosnia and Herzegovina maintained its territorial integrity, but it was divided into 2 autonomous parts, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska. Both sides remember the events of the war as a great tragedy, a bloody conflict that could have been avoided. For all of Bosnia, July 11th is still a day of remembrance for the victims of the Srebrenica massacre and all victims of all wars.